Hi guys, Matt Sorensen from SpineFit here. Just a quick little coaching tip, if you will. I know many of you are in pain, which isn't very fun. For some people it is, but that's a different chat. So what we're talking about today is what really is pain. Now, what pain is physiologically is actually a perceived threat, and technically it's an emotion. When we're in pain, it gets recorded in the amygdala, which is part of the limbic system, which manages our emotions. And studies have shown that the limbic centers of the brain start lighting up when we experience pain. From more of an anatomical point of view, it's more of a signal to shut that part of the body off. So, for example, you might tweak your back. You tweak your back, that sends a signal, a pain signal, to what's called the internunциal pool of the spinal cord, which then sends it through the central nervous system up into the brain. The brain records it as pain on that level, takes it down back to the area that hurts, and typically will either lock down muscles and joints or turn them off, which in turn, when you get an area of the body switched off, then other muscles that don't normally do that kind of work do that kind of work. Now, pain can be expressed on any level, really, physically, mentally, emotionally, even spiritually, if people want to go that deep. But due to our evolution, due to our embryology, emotions, physiology, the soft tissues of our body actually are a reflection of our emotional anatomy. The joints of our skeleton, our posture, actually portray our underlying psychological state. And remember, humans are wired to survive, and our body is a master compensator. So our insides contain vital blood supplies, neural connections that organize and play physical, emotional, psychological roles in maintaining a balance of being. So any dysfunction related to internal compression is likely to really result in altered muscular recruitment to minimize this compression into our internal structures. So you can cut your arm and it's not too bad. It'll heal pretty quick. But if you slit an artery or a nerve inside, then that is perceived by the body as life-threatening. So the body goes into a compensatory pattern, which leads to a functional compensation if not corrected through correct diet, proper rest, proper exercising, etc. It turns into a structural compensation. And compensations inevitably result in premature wear and tear on joints, over and underused musculature as well. There's also as dysfunction within the visceral system. So I know a lot of people think that pain can be genetic, which can be true to a point. Now, we all have a genetic predisposition to something. However, statistically, that only really accounts for 3 to 5% of pain. So you've still got a 97 to 95% of not inheriting that genetic pain, as it were. The rest of pain is typically made up of, 10% with accidents, motor vehicle accident, falling, being tackled awkwardly. And then 85% of all pain is actually recorded as being idiopathic, which means there's no known origin or event that caused the pain. So what do we do for that? Well, we need to try a holistic approach. We need to choose nutrition, quality over quantity. We need to correct our posture with an exercise program that's specifically designed for your body. And arguably most importantly, having a dream, goal, or objective that's so strong that it's worth changing for, to change the habits and patterns that got you into the pain in the first place. And a lot of this is unconscious, a lot of it's subconscious, and it's only when we're hurting it becomes conscious. So keep in mind that any diagnosis is really just a symptom. So if you think about it, you've got diagnosis of the disc bulge. What caused the bulge to come out? The diagnosis is the symptom. So these diagnoses can take years, if not decades, to show up. So when we're in pain, it's really your body saying, I can't effectively compensate any longer. Now, I'm going to take you through a brief, not theory, a brief concept, if you will. So there's a saying in psychology, and it applies here. The more psychic weight you have, weight of the world on your shoulders, the more psychic weight you have. So it's the same word, different spelling, but you could also use that in pain. So a painful weight versus a painful weight. So someone could argue that, let's say, idiopathic pain on any level, it can start with a single thought. So bear with me. A thought you keep thinking turns into a belief. That belief shapes your behavior. That behavior inevitably turns into and directs an outcome. So if someone lives a certain way due to beliefs, be it social, sexual, religious ideologies, etc., that really aren't congruent with them as a human being, then that leads to the heaviness or the weight. And that can display mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and only when it hurts physically is that when it's been around long enough that we experience the physical pain of it. So if you look through the Hindu system of the chakras, we hold the energy of these ideas in certain parts of the body according to the psychological theme of the idea. So for example, one of our primal fears, our primal drives in this life is ideas around safety and security. So in the modern world, this translates to financial status, relationships, our social network, that kind of thing. Now, these are held at the base of the spine, more specifically L5 to S5, right at the bottom of the last vertebrae in the spine and the sacrum. And also the rectum, low back, the adrenals, the coccygeal nerves, and any real muscle joint organ on that nerve channel. So 90% of our foot, for example, is innervated by the sciatic nerve, which technically really stems higher, but it forms at around L4-5 and becomes the sciatic nerve around S2, S3, depending what anatomy book you read, of course. So stress in these psychological centers essentially is from excess energy. And when there's too much energy running through a circuit, we blow the fuse. So that's when essentially we have pain. So what can we do with that? Well, there's obviously mental, emotional things we can do, even spiritual. But from a physical point of view, we typically get pain from uneven loading on joints or over and or under usage of muscles that cross over or attach to that joint complex. And when force is generated by lifting loads extrinsically, so lifting a weight, catching an object, throwing an object, or intrinsically, which would be, for example, the weight of the head on the neck, the weight of the spine on the lumbopelvic complex. That's an intrinsic load. So when that's not counted or dissipated throughout the body, then a compensation occurs. And it should be dissipated evenly throughout the body by activation of the core. So unfortunately today, there is a huge lack of understanding about what the core is. So each profession, chiro, physio, osteo, Pilates, PTs, etc., they're all taught different things about what core function is. Anatomically, the core consists of the pelvic floor, which is made up of 22 muscles itself. And the main problem with that one is probably the pubococcygeal muscle. They hold digestive eliminations in. We have the diaphragm, which is the main breathing muscle, the only muscle that works 24/7. We have the transverse abdominis, which pulls your back into a corset, so it holds you into extension, keeping you nice and upright. Then you have the internal oblique, which works with the external oblique, and they work in concert together to hold your spine, doing side movements and rotation. Then you have a little stabilizer that goes all the way from the sacrum to the base of your skull, called multifidus, which works with the intrinsic movements to stabilize the spine. So all these need to be switched on. And if you don't use it, you lose it over time. And pain is the quickest thing to switch it off. So neurologically speaking, these muscles are all designed to work together, switch on together. And many rehab protocols today work only to isolate one muscle to get it switched on, but they don't integrate it with other movements that's needed. So for example, a lot of doctors or chiropractors don't like people squatting. So there's a very simple problem to that solution. And that problem is, how do you go to the toilet? So you need to be able to do these certain patterns in life just to get around. Now think about getting in and out of a car. That's a single leg squat with a lateral shift and rotations. That's a pretty advanced exercise if you go to do that in the gym. So we have to be able to integrate these movements together. Now there's one of my favorite tips I use with my patients and clients is doing what's called a survival reflex, which is actually overrides the pain reflex in the body. Pain will shut down anything as quickly as possible, but when you stimulate a survival reaction simply by trying to balance on a Swiss ball, be it kneeling, laying on your tummy and just trying to hold that, that's a perceived threat by the body. So the brain goes into a survival mode, which actually switches on all the muscles just enough to get them activated. Then you do your exercise program with that, and that's how you can help to rehab those muscles that have switched off. So that'll do for me today. More tips coming soon.